She's got a wealth of experience that she'll be able to share with us. So over 2 decades working in the social and affordable housing space. So whilst most of us probably are aware of Homes New South Wales, some of Lucy's other roles, high-profile roles in particular, has been as the National Manager of the largest housing provider in Australia, which is Community Housing Limited, CHL, sure we're all aware of them. I know Lucy's also been the Business Development Manager for Aboriginal housing and affordable housing as well, and has also led on the development of local government housing agencies and strategies. And I know that she loves supporting organisations and teams like ours to come up with creative decisions in terms of building capability and helping others reach their potential as well. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Lucy to today's masterclass. Lucy, welcome. It's lovely to have you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you very much. That's a very warm welcome, Ellie. G'day, everyone. I'm going to start by acknowledging that I'm on Aboriginal land, as you all are, as you know, wherever you're dialing in from. Aboriginal land always was, always will be. I'm joining from the land of the Jurrinja people on the south coast of New South Wales. I want to pay respect to elders, past and present. And I want to thank you very much for coming this morning, and also for your tolerance, because I'm not Renee, and some of you I suspect know Renee because I know not so long ago she was one of you. So I'm a poor substitute, but I'm happy, very, very happy to be here. I work really closely with Renee at Homes New South Wales in my substantive role. She's my boss, so some of you might know what that feels like as well. But I am currently working in a different branch in Homes New South Wales as the acting executive director. And I mean, why don't we dive in? I mean, you know, why don't we start talking about leading through change? And I understand that this is a part of the way through your program. So some of the things that I touch on today perhaps are things that you might have already touched on in your work so far. So that's okay. If it's a bit repetitive, you can say, move along, or if it's something that you want to dwell on, that would be fine too. But I guess the focus of today is about leading through change, because mostly that's what you're called on to do as a leader. Mostly you put your leadership skills into action because things are moving. Maybe they're moving in a direction that you're part of setting and you're part of the leadership of that. Maybe things are changing around you and you're leading a team through a time of real uncertainty. You know, things happen in the world, right? So leading through change, you know, is absolutely a massive part of leadership and thinking about leadership. So you want to jump to the next one? Thanks, Ellie. So thank you very much for having me. And my intention here is just to have a bit of a conversation about some of the content on the slides. I think we've done the acknowledgement. Yeah, thanks. And then to leave plenty of time for discussion if we get all the way to the end of the presentation, which I promise is not that many slides. I know I'm from the government, and so often, you know, it's a slide pack led kind of operation, but there's not too many slides. And if we get all the way to the end, there's some discussion questions there that might be quite helpful, but don't let that stop you from having thoughts and questions and sharing them along the way as well. So there's three things that I wanted to talk about a little bit. The first is leadership as self-reflection. Easy to say, hard to do, as many things are. And if self-reflection has come up as a concept so far in your leadership course, great. If not, I'm happy to just kind of dwell on that a little bit today. I wanted to give, by way of a worked example, I suppose, how the senior leaders at Homes New South Wales are thinking about leadership in practice as we create and now drive as far and fast as we possibly can a brand new organisation, Homes New South Wales, and then some reflections about what leading through change might mean in your circumstances. So that's the go for today. So if you want to move on to the next one when you have a sec, Ellie, that would be great. So we'll stare at this for a little while, not because, you know, you want to see the bottom of an iceberg. I think probably people grasp the iceberg analogy, which is to say, you know, it's well accepted that only 10% of the iceberg is visible and 90% of it is invisible. But that doesn't mean that it's not important. The invisible is hugely important. And from a leadership point of view, the analogy asks us to think about the things that we bring to the task of leadership, to the work that we do with our teams, to the work that we do with our colleagues, perhaps if you're part of a leadership group, perhaps an executive team, to the work that you do if perhaps you're on the board of an organisation. Sometimes people do board service. That's certainly part of part of my career, different aspects of leadership, but often the work that you do, in all the work that you do, it's helpful to be able to, step one, remember that there are things that aren't visible, bunch of assumptions, things that are just how your brain works, things that matter to you. And so step one, acknowledge that. And then step two, try and get a bit of an ability to think about those things and bring them to the surface in your mind. It doesn't mean you have to talk about them all the time, but just to be able to kind of draw those things out for yourselves. So underneath the iceberg are some of those big drivers, like your culture, how you were brought up. What's your family like? Are you a boy or a girl, or in between? What are your values? What are the experiences that you've gone through in life? These things don't come to the front all the time, but they're always there as part of the style of your leadership. And equally true for all the people that you're leading. So no one is kind of completely evidently what's on the surface there. Everyone brings these other elements. And so I think the challenge for us as leaders is to be able to reflect on those things and say, what is it that I'm bringing to this that I might need to be a bit more aware of? Sometimes you notice this when leadership feels really hard. You probably already know leadership often feels really hard. Actually, it's not an easy gig, and everyone has an opinion about how you're going, and that's really challenging. So to be able to use that discomfort that you sometimes feel in a leadership role and go, what's going on here? Is it a set of assumptions that I'm bringing that perhaps aren't the only set of assumptions that I could bring here? Are my life experiences leading me to want to, or causing me to behave in a certain way, or to make a set of assumptions, or to think that X is the only way to go? But I've got a group of people around me who don't have the same life experiences, and they're starting assumptions, their idea about what the right course of action might be, or what the alternatives might be, is really different. So it's a call to reflect on yourself. That's different from self-criticism. I think reflection is a gentle word. You may find that you're criticizing yourself and going, I really would like to have done that differently. That's okay, as long as you're gentle with yourself as you think about that, because you're going to have a chance to do it again. Leadership doesn't end. There's always another opportunity. It's a little bit like, one of the beautiful things I love about playing sport is that it doesn't matter if something goes wrong. It only matters what you do next. So, that's not to say we're careless about it. Of course, you try to do your best, but if something goes wrong, if something's not as effective as you thought it would be, that's not a moment, to shut up shop and not try again. It's an opportunity for that sort of reflection that this slide is encouraging you to build into your practice and go, well, there's going to be a next time. What does next time look like? What might I do differently next time? That idea of not giving yourself feedback, looking back only, but give yourself feed forward. What would next look like if I were to learn from this? I really want to draw attention to the bottom 2 dot points under the iceberg there, because I think people can kind of grasp how culture and family and upbringing and gender and values and life experiences, shape you and continue to shape you, and how you might sort of be able to reflect on those. Strengths, I think, is a really important one, because we all have strengths. I didn't want to say weaknesses, because, not strengths, things that aren't your wheelhouse, things that you're not as super comfortable with, things where you might only give yourself, 4 out of 10 instead of 10 out of 10. I guess one of the messages that I would like to pass on is, you don't have to be 10 out of 10 at everything to be a leader. You don't have to be 10 out of 10 at everything to be a really great leader. No one's 10 out of 10 at everything, but you will have strengths. You'll have things that you just know. And if, as part of the self-reflection, you'll probably be able to spot those, or you could ask some trusted people what you're really great at. It might be that you're really great at giving motivational speeches, or that you're really great at just unpacking what someone else's motivational speech might mean in practice over here, or you're really great at just listening to people, or you're really great at making sure that the person who's just joined and feels really on the outside feels a bit more like they're on the inside by the end of the conversation. Lots of different strengths that you might bring to leadership. You'll be bringing more than one, but don't feel like you've got to be perfect at everything. So reflect on your strengths and how you can use them to be the kind of leader that you are, but also where there are things that you go, I'm not so good at that. I'm not so good at listening when someone tells me something that I already know, or listening when it's the 17th person who's talking to me and I've already listened to the first 16, or I'm not so good at, getting my head around a brand new thing really, really rapidly. My strength is in thinking about it and coming back with something really great a little bit later, but in the moment, that's not my strength. That's okay too. It's not a moment of self-criticism. It's a moment of self-reflection. And as a leader, you might say, well, I'm not that great at responding in the moment to the new emergency thing. So I'm going to figure out who around me is and make sure that I've got that as a resource to tap into. And I can even have a really explicit conversation with that person who's really, really good at going, oh, I think I know what that means, and go, when something weird happens, I'm going to call you and we're going to have a conversation. And that's joining them to the, kind of binding them to your common endeavor, getting them on board. Also a really respectful and lovely way of acknowledging their strengths and using it to help you. So you don't have to become great at everything. You don't have to grab that person's strengths and make them your own. One of the strengths that you might have as a leader is being able to spot what people are good at and helping them to participate and using those other people's strengths where you have a not strength. It'd be nice if we weren't 4 out of 10 at everything, but don't feel like you've got to get it up to 10. Like sometimes 5 is a pass mark, sometimes 7 out of 10 is a pass mark. So think about your strengths and how you really want to use them in your leadership style. And also think about the things where you know you're not as strong and how you can use other people around you to bolster that and to give them the recognition for their strengths in that area. And the last of those dot points that I wanted to dwell on just a little bit as well is about thinking style. I do a lot of work with boards of directors. I love being on a board of directors. No one ever pays me for it. And when you find that you're doing something that no one's paying you for, you know you really like doing it. So that's me on boards. And I love it because I love organisations and I love it when people come together, and I love the board's role in helping a whole organisation make a really great decision about what it should do next, thinking about its stakeholders, its customers, its staff, its position in the market, its opportunities long-term, its long-term sustainability, all the complex things that mean that you need to take into account, even sometimes for a fairly straightforward decision. I love that. So one of the things that I've learned over and over from being on a board of directors is diversity of thought is incredibly important. You don't want a board of 7 people, all of whom think the same way and they all say the same thing. I mean, it kind of feels comfy, but you probably know that you're going to be making some dud decisions because no one said, oh, but what about the something else that no one else has thought about? So I feel like by analogy, there's an opportunity as a leader to think about what your thinking style is. And what do I mean by thinking style? I mean, some people kind of comfortably and naturally and first think about all the risks. You suggest something and they can all tell you about the 15 things that could probably go wrong. Some people naturally think about what the outcomes are. What are we desiring to get to? What's our purpose here? Some people naturally and obviously think about the processes. It's a great idea, but how would we actually do it? What would I need to put in place first, second, and third for that to work? Some people really naturally think about people. Who's going to be affected? Who would I need to tell? Who's going to feel threatened by this or feel excited by this? There's a bunch of different ways that we think. And people don't naturally bring all of them at once. You've got one, probably 2 ways of thinking that are yours, that you use most of the time. So again, a little bit like your strengths, what's your thinking style? And if you're someone who can really, really rapidly and naturally think about impacts on people, but you're not very good at thinking about risks, that's another opportunity to go, who in my circle is really good at that? And how can I use them as part of my leadership to go, I'm going to tap into you. What are you seeing when you see this? I see all the ways it's going to affect people, or I see all the ways that it's going to help us achieve our mission. What am I missing? Or maybe you're someone who can only see the risks, and what you need to do is be tapping into someone who says, why? But why would we do this? Like, let's bring some enthusiasm so we're balancing that out. So I think, think about your own thinking style. Think about the strengths that you bring and also the areas that aren't sort of naturally yours. Don't feel like you've got to change who you are. I mean, we're all changing and learning all the time, but I think it's not an invitation to become someone else. It's an invitation to be really clear about who you are and what you can bring and how you can use others' strengths as well. And again, the same for your people. So everyone you're leading brings their own iceberg to it, their own thinking style, their own strengths. And I think it's why that practice of self-reflection is something that is useful for leadership all the time. It's not at the end of your career, you look back on what kind of leader you were. It's almost like probably you're doing it every day. Maybe you're doing it after every encounter. Certainly you're doing it regularly to say, how did that go? How did I show up there? What kind of leader was I just now? Is that the kind of leader I want to be? A little bit of authenticity goes a really long way. We can probably all think of really great leaders. I'm sure you can all think of some really terrible leaders. My experience of work is, I've been lucky enough to work with a small handful of really excellent leaders and some really, really good managers. They're not the same. There's a big overlap, but they're not the same. And a whole lot of how not to guides. A lot of people that you really rather wish weren't in leadership positions and certainly weren't your manager. So you can learn from that as well. But if you think about it, you don't have to become one of those other good leaders that you know. You might draw things from them and learn from them, but actually you have to be you. So your own leadership style, the authenticity that you bring there. And I understand that in a previous session, you might have talked a little bit about leadership style. So I won't go into that now. There's an invitation at the end of this to sort of put some words around that. And you might have already accidentally warmed up for that. But just to reflect on myself, when I think of my leadership style, I like to think of myself as a highly collaborative leader. Now, that sounds really excellent. And it's actually about what you do to make that real. Otherwise, it's just words that you put in the cover letter for the job you're applying for, or things you find yourself saying in a job interview. And it's like, yeah, it's in danger of sounding a little bit up yourself. What do you mean by being a collaborative leader? And what I mean by that is I measure my leadership by how big a coalition of people coming along with me I can create. So it's not the only way to go about it. Sometimes leaders measure their leadership by how far out in front they can be. You know, those kind of people are just like, it's all about what's over the horizon. And the more daylight there is between them and the next person, the more they feel like that's leadership. Now, that's not my style. Maybe it's one of yours. It's not a bad thing. It's just, you know, a thing that's worth reflecting on and drawing out. For me, I want to bring people with, and the bigger the coalition, the better. I had a really excellent colleague in a previous organisation who used to say, "Can everybody up the back see?" And that was her kind of little kind of memory jogger for, have we left anybody behind? As a leader, and she wasn't someone who was in a leadership position. She was a leader from the middle, and she felt like her job as a leader was to make sure that no one got left behind. Didn't matter. She didn't want to be far, far out in front of people. She wanted to make sure that even the people up the back could see, everyone was close enough to know what was going on. And I that rings in my ears sometimes, and I try and learn from that as well. So I would really warmly encourage you to think about self-reflection on your leadership style, on the things that are below the waterline, on your iceberg, not to criticize yourself, but just to draw those things out. Ellie, do you want to jump onto the next one? And we don't have to look at the iceberg anymore. Homes New South Wales, my goodness, what on earth were we thinking? So Homes New South Wales was an election commitment when the Labor government took power in 2023, I think I'm right to say. It was established in February 2024, so it's a little bit over 18 months old. So if we were a person, we'd still be a toddler. But we're not toddling, we are running. It was quite challenging to create Homes New South Wales. I know from your position at SGCH, you work in the social housing sector, so you know all the different bits of housing. We did homelessness as well. So, and I know that's true of SGCH. It's not true of all of our community housing providers. So that full span of all of the things that you need to do and pay attention to and care about across housing and homelessness. So specifically, when we created Homes New South Wales, we brought together all the housing and homelessness bits of Department of Communities and Justice, DCJ. We brought together the entirety of the Land and Housing Corporation, LAC, which had been in a separate department, under separate management, completely doing its own thing, as people probably know, and the Aboriginal Housing Office, which is really unique to New South Wales, precious and important part of the housing system in New South Wales. It has its own board. It has its own legislation. It's not just another branch. It's its own entity, and it requires a self-identity. But the idea was to bring all of those pieces together into Homes New South Wales under one roof, as the Minister would say, housing and homelessness. So that's 3,500 staff, 98,000 properties under management, more of that owned, as SGCH folks would know. Quite a lot of the properties that the community housing sector manage, Black still owns. 250,000 tenants. Homes New South Wales is the largest landlord in the Southern Hemisphere, and as well as being a deliverer in the social housing system or the non-market housing and homelessness system, is also really importantly a steward of that system. So the relationship that Homes has to SGCH and other organisations like you, we're not the boss of you. We have a different kind of relationship, but we're kind of all in it together. Sometimes we're both providers. Sometimes we've got a decision-making role. Sometimes we've got a monitoring or oversight role. What we want to have is a deeply collaborative role. So bringing all those pieces together and setting it up for success, that's leading through change. And so some of the dot points, like the non-dot points at the bottom there, the sort of the hurdles that we had to overcome. Bureaucracies are bureaucracies, and these pieces of that became Homes New South Wales had come from very different bureaucracies. So there was all those kind of nitty gritty of you do it this way and I do it this way, and you only care about the property and you only care about the tenants, and I only care about people who aren't even tenants yet because they want to be tenants and they're not. Like how do we make all of that not just the finger pointing exercise that it can become, but actually come together? There were duplication of functions. What does that mean for the people who are doing that job? Does that mean we don't need you anymore? Does that mean you get to do something else? What might that be? Some parts of our non-market housing and homelessness system, including our customers, our tenants and our homelessness services customers, don't trust government particularly. So a big old machinery government change, that's not very exciting. Did we have enough money? No, we did not. The system had been underfunded for a really long time. I'm not telling you anything you don't know there. We've had some funding success since then, but it's still not. It's historic and it's incredible, but it's still not going to touch the side. So lots of pressures on our staff, on our customers. Lots of pressures on us to make this new agency work. Do you want to jump to the next one? That's the kind of the what was going on slide. How did we go about it? So our CEO, Beck Pinkstone, who's also someone that you may know because before she was the Homes New South Wales CEO, she was the CEO of Bridge Housing, one of your fellow organisations. But Becky's a very driven person. She's a very an inspirational leader, I'd say. If you had to put an adjective on her leadership style, I would say that she's inspirational. And the same goes for our minister, actually. Rose Jackson is also a very far-sighted, decisive person who is a very inspirational leader. Good qualities in a minister and a CEO, I have to say. So these 3 C's of change kind of reflect the way that, led by Beck Pinkstone and the executive team that Renee's on and that I'm on, we thought about what are some of the pieces of the change that we needed to be really deliberate about. So the first C is communicate. How are we going to talk to people about creating Homes New South Wales? Are we just going to let it happen? Or are we going to make a big thing of it? Is it one conversation, or is it lots and lots of conversations to keep people along a journey that's not necessarily going to be very straightforward? This was a really major change. So the answer was lots of communication. But there was something about some clarity of message. So you don't say a million things to a million different people. You say the same kinds of things, but you say them over and over until people start to really understand them and know that you mean them. How will you communicate? Lots of different ways. You don't just pop it in an email or do a newsletter or there's the ministerial press release or something like that. You do it in lots of different ways. You reach people where they are. So that idea of meeting the needs of different audiences. People won't grasp the messages that you're trying to give about how exciting it is to have all of these pieces of the housing and homelessness system together under Homes New South Wales. They won't grasp how important that is or what that might mean for their work or the cultural change that might be coming as a result of bringing everyone together and asking us to act as one agency. They'll hear that differently. They'll learn it differently. They'll understand it differently. It will sink in at a different time scale. So different audiences. What do tenants need to hear? Your tenancy is safe. For example, what do our maintenance contractors need to hear? Are we changing the maintenance contract, or are they still going to be working for us, even though the us now has a different name and a different colour and a different logo? What do staff need to hear? Frontline staff, back of house staff, staff in the Aboriginal Housing Office. What do people need to hear? So you think about who all your audiences are, and you can do that quite deliberately, and think about how best to deliver those messages to them, even if the core messages are actually really quite similar or really strong overlap there. As a leader, you're balancing, I think, a whole lot of things all the time. And one of the things you're balancing is what am I trying to achieve? What do other people need? What am I trying to achieve? What do other people need? And this idea of kind of going to where your audiences are, going to where your team is, and really understanding from their point of view, stand in their shoes, sit in their chair, think about their drivers, think about their iceberg, think about what's going on for them and go, what do I need to do to make sure that I'm communicating with all of them, not just saying it the way I would hear it. So, what do I need, but what do they need? What do they need? You're often thinking about other people as a leader. Because there's lots of things that as a senior leader, but you can't always say them, or you can't always say them at the moment that you get asked about them, it's useful to think in advance about what you can and can't say. So you might go into a town hall meeting, all hands, everyone's there, and you're going to get questions on the chat. When am I going to get a new executive director, for example? You may not know the answer to that, or you may know the answer and you're not in a position to say it. But being ready to know what you can share and what you can't is actually really important about keeping your communication authentic and useful and real, but not getting sort of stumbling into the, but probably can't talk about that. But you can be explicit. Say, I'm sorry, I can't share that with you at the moment. And people will take that, because when you can share it, you will. So you kind of build up that trust, so that if you say, we're not in a position to share that just at the moment, or we're still finalising that, knowing what words sound authentic to you and convey the genuine openness, and that you're going to keep communicating, but not everything is on the table right now. Some of that kind of preparation goes a long way. Collaborate. So we talked a little bit before about different styles of thought and diversity of thought and the value of that in my personal experience on the board. Same goes for change. So getting lots of different voices and lots of different input helps you build a better outcome. One of the things that Beck was really determined to do with Homes New South Wales was to give subject matter experts a voice. So you're not just influential because you happen to hold a senior position. You might be influential because you really know what it's like on the ground in the Newcastle office. You know who walks through the door, you know what they need, you know how much we can help them and how often we're telling them they need to wait for something and how long that wait is. That's subject matter expertise. So subject matter expertise comes from everywhere, and being able to build that into the change process so that you're not kind of doing everything from the centre or doing everything from the top, doing everything by the book. This is a big, complex organisation. All those staff, all those tenants, all of those, all of those properties, all of that complexity, all of those homelessness contracts. The more is more. Being able to identify where there's subject matter expertise and really draw that into the process, so that you're able to work through the change process and understand what is going to be affected, what might need to change, first, second, and third, in a fairly collaborative way. And the ambition there is, it's a bit like my collaborative leadership style. It's about, how can I bring people along? We don't want them to hear changes coming and then sit back and wait to see what happens. We need them along the journey, because it takes a long time. So that idea of, even if people don't feel like they're a big decision maker in every change, even if they don't feel like they're deeply involved in it, and it's a Monday to Friday 9 to 5 kind of thing, or Monday to Sunday 8 till 8 kind of thing, as a change often is. It might not be the first and last thing they think about as they get into the office, or they dial in, or they get out into the field. But that idea that even people who are less close to it are committed to it, so they can see that there's a change coming. They understand why we're changing. They have a sense of the direction. As a leader, you're often giving clarity of direction rather than every last little bit and piece along the way, but clarity of direction. We're going in this direction, and here's why, and encourage people to commit to the idea of change and be interested in how it's going to work out, rather than just waiting to see or feeling like it's nothing to do with them, even if they're not hands-on doing that change every day. And the last of the C's really just picks up that commitment idea, and that's a challenge for the leaders as well. You say you're going to do something, really helpful if you deliver. Really helpful if you deliver the first couple of things that you say you're going to do. And change is hard, and there's lots of elements of it. So as you're designing it, as you're thinking about it, as a leader, you're saying, what will it look like first? What will people feel first? And how can we make sure that we tell them what's going to happen and then we do it? So it's a little bit, we said, we did. Meet those first timeframes. Things are going to go wrong in change. Almost always change takes about twice as long as you think it will, maybe 3 times as long. So you kind of know that, but you can't say, oh, we're going to do this change and it's a decade in the making. So set some of those more close at hand human scale timeframes and make sure that you meet them. Keep that collaboration and communication going along the way. If things change, you get to say why. You get to say, we didn't get the funding we needed for this part, so we're going to do this bit next. Or that last thing took a whole lot longer because we were working through some really tricky human resources things so that everyone was treated fairly. That's why we're only now getting on to the next phase. So the more that you can be explicit about that and tell people using all of your different communication channels, tell them one-on-one, tell them in a team meeting, pop it in the newsletter, have it at the all hands, lots of different ways. And then as much as you can, don't skimp on the implementation and the review. So change isn't something that you announce. Change is something that you do, and it takes a long time and it has lots of moving parts. And so really saying, if we're going to do all of those things, let's really think about how we're going to implement that and keep investing in the people that are needed to do that, rather than being someone who thinks change is about saying it. Change is about doing it. I mean, I'm a public policy person. My current substantive role is as a strategy director. That sounds a lot like setting directions and articulating directions, but I know, and you probably all know too, that as a leader, an idea is only as good as its implementation. A great idea that can't work, a commitment that can't stick, may as well not do. So it's about how can you commit and show that commitment and by the good faith that you need for the rest of the process by making sure that you're meeting some of those early timeframes and hitting some of those early deliverables. Do you want to jump on to the next one? So I think I mentioned earlier that our CEO, Beck Pinkstone, and our minister, both very driven, very clear, very direction-setting kinds of people. Very confident as well. And you could have forgiven our CEO for saying, well, I've just been appointed as the first CEO of this brand new agency by a minister who really wants me to get on and deliver. So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to get on and deliver. You would have forgiven her for doing that. But she didn't. She started by listening, which sounds slow, but it's actually, you know, sort of slow is smooth, smooth is fast. Do it slow now so that you can move more quickly later. She did a very deliberate, very visible set of listening to staff. She went and talked to lots of staff and listened to staff. She listened to customers. We had, even though we were moving very quickly, we made sure that we had, before Homes was created, a series of customer engagement sessions where we just heard what people had been frustrated about from a customer point of view, tenant point of view, applicant point of view, homelessness services. What is it that frustrates you about how the old system worked? Let's make sure we solve for that in our change process. Listen, and the stakeholders in the sector, especially those key delivery partners, you're one of them, who are part of delivering housing and homelessness services. Listen. The work that was done then, even though it was done in a fairly short time frame, was so effective. It didn't just help shape Homes New South Wales. The write-up of those listening sessions, we are still diving into as we think about some of the subsets of change and some of the new directions. We go back to what customers said at those customer sessions and go, what was important to them. They still hold really valid. There's still of value to us 18 plus months later. So listen, document, and learn from that. Build is the second thing there. So really creating that shared vision, not just a vision that's in the back of someone's mind or that one or two people know or that perhaps the new executive team know. Everybody needs to see the vision. What is Homes going to be? What's it for? Why are we doing it this way? And then start to document those things in a business plan. I have to confess, the business plan we had in our first year was pretty terrible. Not the only agency to have had a pretty terrible business plan, but we started in February. It was kind of partway through the year. What are all the things that we think we urgently need to do was kind of the flavour of the business plan. Now that we've moved into our second year, and as we move into future years, we'll have more and more kind of orderly business plans. And I think that is an important part of the change process, to be able to see that maturing of the agency and to see things continuing to change, not to mess around with them, but because some things just need to be phased. Some things you grow into. So we've grown into our ability to do really strong business plans that everyone can see, plan on a page version. I can see where I fit now. And that idea of what's the operating model. So Homes New South Wales could have just been DCJ, silo, LAC, silo, Aboriginal Housing Office, silo. Epic fail if we'd done that. What's our shared operating model? How do we bring these things together and start to write those things down and sort of build some agreement around them? And then there's a whole lot of refining. So change doesn't finish when you've done the first bit. It's almost never finished. It's like, this is the embedding of it. So what does good practice now look like? What are our systems and what changes do we need to make so that that shared operating model is how we're now operating. The business plan is being delivered. And it's last on the slide, not because it's easy, but because it's really hard and really slow, that idea of developing a shared culture. And that's probably a whole other masterclass. So we won't be talking about that a lot at the moment. But I would want to say, as a leader, no matter what your position is in the organisation, you are part of setting the culture of the organisation, and you're not alone in that. But if you can, in your self-reflection, if you can keep that in mind, how you behave is really influential in the setting culture. Are you someone who stops to listen? Are you someone who says, oh, I've not heard that before? Or are you someone who says, we don't do it like that? Are you helping in your behavior, in the how of what you do, not just the what you do, but the how of what you do? Are you creating the culture that the organisation has decided it wants? Often you start to be explicit about culture when you do a values exercise. And I'm not going to make you put your hands up to see if you've done that. You probably have. Sometimes they're a bit sort of stale and weird, and you come up with the same words that the Commonwealth Bank would have come up with, and you go, oh, well, why did we say that? And like, it's less about the words, it's more about what do those words mean around here. When we say transparent or accountable, what do we mean by that? Who are we thinking of when we say that, and how does that play out in my workplace? And as a leader, how do I want to show people what that means around here? So kind of starting to craft that shared culture. I'll say one more thing about culture before we move on, because I'm in danger of talking for too long. Culture in an organisation is often really local. So you might have an ambition for a collaborative, transparent and authentic culture, or whatever, pick a word, as a whole of organisation level for the whole of Homes New South Wales, for the whole of SGCH. But as people who work in an organisation, as leaders, we know that culture is actually often about your team and your manager. So you've got a huge opportunity locally with the team that you work with all the time, with the people that you see all the time, to really shape that culture. You don't have to wait for someone to do it from the top. Do you want to move on to the next one? I'm going to try and be really quick. I think this next one is really just the vision and objectives for Homes New South Wales. So I won't go into that in detail, but these were the 5 action areas, the objectives that we picked: customer-centred service delivery, and that is a step change for Homes New South Wales to actually think about our customers first. Strong partnerships for impact, a viable affordable housing and homelessness system. Interesting that we chose the word affordable. Don't know that we would do that now, because we mean the whole non-market housing and homelessness system, but those are ugly words on a vision page. Viable is an important word, though. We know how challenging that is, a long-term sustainability challenge for us there. More and better homes, which is just a turn of phrase that started to roll off the tongue really readily. More homes, but also better homes, and a thriving and empowered workplace. So that's kind of the more internal focused one. So that's kind of almost like the output of where we got to. Do you want to jump on to the next one? Because it truly is my last slide, not counting the discussion question. So a little kind of reflection moment. Change takes time. So leading through change is not by way of a sprint. It's more like a marathon, or maybe a marathon followed by a marathon followed up by a triathlon. It's a very long process. So just, be ready for that. It's also a process, which means it needs some flexibility. You cannot know on day 1 what day 900 looks like. You probably don't even know what day 90 looks like. So that idea of everyone's on board, and we're going to continue to make decisions and continue to communicate those as we go, because we're going to need to be a little bit flexible. People have really different experiences of a change process. Some people go, oh, my work didn't change, but I no longer know who's outside of my area because I got stuffed in a different branch, or everything I do is now different, or I love it, or I still haven't figured out what's different. Everybody has a different experience, and none of them are wrong. So again, it's that idea of it's not about you, it's about your team, it's about the people. Like, go to your audience and find out what it's like for them, and just remember all the way that people will experience it differently. Not everyone comes along, or at least not as fast as each other. People are at different stages on their sort of change acceptance. That's okay too. Again, change is not something where you measure it by way of perfection. You measure it by way of effectiveness. Have we been able to make that change? Am I still working on the people who really, really didn't like the change? How am I reaching out to those? But we're not stopping. Everyone will come along in their own time. And as a leader, I said it was a marathon followed by a marathon followed by a triathlon. True. So your ability to feel confident as a leader and to feel like you're bringing the right amount of energy, that will come and go. That's okay. Again, self-reflection, but not self-criticism. Like, I am having my not toppest day. Actually, that was me yesterday. Yesterday was not my best day. Hope I'm a little bit better today, but yesterday was not my best day, but I still showed up. I was kind to myself about, I'm not having my best day. I won't make any decisions I don't have to today because they might be a little bit sketchy. But I'll be really kind to others as well. I will let people be kind to me. I don't even need to tell them that I'm not having my toppest day. I'll just know that from myself, that perhaps this is a day when my resilience is, not at its best, but I'll be able to I will show up, I'll get through the day, I'll be kind to people, I'll let them be kind to me, and I'll be okay again tomorrow or the day after. A little bit of self-care there, certainly a little bit of self-awareness. Maintaining a growth mindset. So I think probably that's why you're on this course, right? Because you're interested in what's next. That goes a really long way as a leader, whether you're leading through change or thinking about leadership perhaps more generically. Being able to say, ooh, I didn't know that until now. I feel like that was really, really hard, but here are all the things I learned from it. A practice of self-reflection can really help you to continue growing, but also just that commitment to growing. There's like, you don't need to know everything. If you think you know everything, you're really not learning at all. So not knowing everything is actually quite a nice window to bring to every conversation. Oh, I did not know that, is something that you can say, oh, how interesting. That's the first time I've heard of that. I'm going to think on that. That idea of I'm open to the new. When you talk about setting a culture, that is something that you can model. And just a commitment to being a leader. You're in that role, whether it's a formal role that carries a title that sounds like a leader, or whether you're being a leader from somewhere in the middle. That could be you. To be able to say, I feel like I'm in a leadership role. I see that I'm in a leadership role. People are looking to me for things. I'm okay with that. So I'm going to say yes to that. I'm going to put my hand up for that, even if it's nice and quietly, but I'm not going to try and wriggle out of it. I'm going to be committed to being a leader. Do you want to jump to the last one, and then maybe we can just stare at some of those questions? I know we don't have a huge amount of time left, but these were the discussion questions that I thought might be useful. As a leader, do you or could you imagine a practice where you build in some self-reflection? What might that look like? What's your leadership style? I feel like you might have already thought about that in a previous session, so we don't need to go over that again today. But, if you've got an adjective that you like to pin to your leadership, or some words that you use to describe how you want to go about this, your authentic leadership style, we could talk about that. Maybe this is one to think about in your own time. When you think of good leaders you have known, what kinds of behaviours come to mind? I don't mean what was their job title or what thing were they trying to do. It's the how I think that we can learn from other leaders, what kinds of behaviours. And if you've got any not so good leaders coming to mind as well, what kinds of behaviours would you like to learn from and not do? Then you can learn a lot from that as well. And then finally, if we think about those 3 C's of change, specifically about leading through change, communicating, building that collaboration, and delivering and committing, how can those things help inform how you think about your leadership? So I'm a little bit in your hands if you would like to pick one or more of those. I've got them up on my screen off to the side here. So if we maybe take the slides down, but maybe let me know what has prompted some thinking in what I've said, hopefully something, or whether there's perhaps one or more of those questions that really that you'd like to respond to in this moment. How do you build in your practice of self-reflection? Thoughts about your own leadership style? Great leaders, not so great leaders, what kinds of behaviours, what's the how that they do, and thinking about those 3 C's of change. Over to you.
I feel like you really nailed it in the head, even with your comment that yesterday wasn't a good day. Actually owning that, it actually builds that trust that you're willing to be open with the team to say, hey, today's not a good one. It also passes that information on to a team member who's about to approach you with something that might need a decision of going, hold on a minute. Well, today's probably not a good day for that. Let's do that further in the week or whatever that may be. So that actually for me builds a bit of trust in you being open and honest about how you are coming into work, because we all have a crap day, let's be honest. And it's about how you actually approach that situation.
Oh, nice, Daniel. Thanks for that. And also very supportive comment. So thank you. Other thoughts? Do you feel like you reflect on your leadership practice? Is that a thing or is that something you're going to need to take away and think about? How might I build that into my work as a leader?
I think it's important to seek feedback from the people that you're supervising at regular junctions. Informally, formally, just have your finger on the pulse to see how others perceive your leadership style, and that can sort of feed into your own self-reflection on your effectiveness and things that you can do differently.
Nice, Mel. Yeah, I reckon there's an and there. I think feedback from others is really important, whether it's the super formal sort of 360-degree or whether it's that, checking in. And I love the way you use the word effectiveness there. Like, that is what you're striving for as a leader. Like, is this working? So I think that's a really nice insight, and other people can give you really, really useful feedback or feed forward. What am I going to do next time on that? But I think it's an and I would really encourage you to start with your own reflections, especially if, when you think about your iceberg, you realize that one of the things that's down there underneath is that perhaps you're really overly influenced by other people's expectations. Putting my hand up for that. Other people's expectations, man, they're everywhere. And it can be really helpful, but sometimes you need to say, I'm going to carve out the time, maybe first, maybe at the end, but I'm not going to miss the opportunity to ask myself, what do I think about how that went? You are a great source and resource for yourself. That's not instead of listening to other people. I think it's an and. So I'll just encourage you to think about balancing those things, and reflect on the feedback that you've been given, but also, I think that went. What would I like to do next time? You'll give yourself some great advice if you let yourself, I reckon.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Mel. I think Joanna as well. Were you going to add to that? I saw you came off mute.
Yeah, I was about to say the and part before Malcolm said the before part. So, but yeah, it's already been said. So.
No, that's great. And is that something you do?
All the time. All the time.
Nice.
I have a very strong personality, and sometimes I have to actually step away from myself and really look at the different personalities in the team to see how am I going to address, because I have to constantly shift the way I address things and how I speak to each of the team members based on, how they receive information.
Yeah.
And that's something I've had to learn within myself, because I've always been, I'll say it this way, and that's just the way it's said, where I've had to pull myself back at times, go, okay, Joe, you can't do that with, person 1, 2, and 3. You can do it person 4, but you can't do it. So that self-reflection of, and also the preparation before going into conversations or going into one-on-one meetings and going into conversations. I have in my head how I'm going to address it, but then I also have to remember who I'm speaking to, and do I have to adjust that and to deliver it differently. So that's a continuous thing in my head. It's exhausting.
It's exhausting. Thank you for saying that. It is, isn't it? I think leadership is exhausting for at least 2 reasons. One, you're going to be busy, right? Because, you've got a lot going on. So, just being a leader is exhausting. But also, I find, and you've just touched on some of it there really beautifully, you are all the time calibrating and recalibrating. You're not recalibrating once a year in a professional development conversation. You're recalibrating all the time. Like, I've just said it this way. Did it land? I'm looking at all the faces on the screen. Is there someone who perhaps looks like they want to say something, but they haven't? Have I given them enough opportunity? When's it all about them? When does it need to be about me? When do I need to go, self-care? And when do I just keep giving, calibrate, recalibrate?
Yeah. And as well, when you're having those conversations with multiple people individually, you're constantly adjusting the way you are, right? Which is still you, but it's a different version of you that is going to relate to that person. And I find that part a bit more exhausting when, I've spoken to 5 out of the 9 people in my team, and all 5 of them require a different approach. And, there's half my day gone. And then having to come back to me, correct. That's a tomorrow problem.
Yeah. And so, a bit of self-reflection there might be, I've just had a really heavy day of carefully tailoring my messages to the individuals to make sure that my leadership is effective. So at what point in the day might I need 15 minutes to not do that? Just whatever the opposite of that is. Maybe it's like, putting my head down and putting my feet up. Maybe it's doing some written work that's nothing to do with communicating. Even talking is tiring, right? Like talking is legit tiring, just the physical act of it. So, saying, am I going to be okay to just power on for the rest of the day because I've had these 5 really full-on sessions, or do I need to just take a moment, recalibrate? Am I okay? Do I need to keep going? Because how you show up is actually, kind of 3/4 of the job.
Yeah.
So what you don't want to do is, you, me, anyone, find yourself at the end of a day that's been really full on, not being able to do it in the way you need it, if 15 minutes or half an hour or just something different at some point. I don't mean, take a nap necessarily. Take a nap if you can, but like if you need to be just doing something that is not the same as a bit of a break, if you can build that in, that's where self-reflection is your best resource, because you can ask yourself, what do I need so that I can keep doing my job really well? And it sounds like you've got a bit of a practice of that because you're so aware of some of the
I often just call my husband and he hears all my friends.
I wonder who
So then he
calls.
has to find his own way to reflect or whatever.
That's right. Yep, great answer.
Thanks, Joanna. We've got 5 minutes left. Has anyone else got any other comments or questions for Lucy? Lucy's been through a lot of different topics today.
I have.
Anyone else want to jump in?
Well, maybe being a leader is sometimes knowing when to stop and give people 4 minutes back in their day.
Possibly. I'm going to add one takeaway from me, which was the term feed forward, not feedback. I love that. I'm going to start using that from now on. I thought that was amazing.
I didn't make it up, but I found it really useful when I heard it for the first time. You think, oh, this is one of those change of language. You get, oh no, actually that's really useful. I don't care how the path. I only care what I do next. Love that. So I'm glad it's worked for you. You're welcome.
I'm going to use that. Thank you, Lucy. Alrighty. Well, if there's no other comments or questions, we can give you a few minutes back in your day and we can wrap the session up. So thank you everyone for participating today. And a huge thank you to Lucy. That was absolutely brilliant. I think everyone got something from it. I saw a lot of people nodding as you were talking, and there was a lot of takeaways for people, which is great. Thank you, Lindsay. Yep, claps coming through. I don't know if you can see these, Lucy. People are
thank you all for your time. It's very generous of you. So I hope it was useful, or at least a little bit interesting, something there. And enjoy the rest of your Tuesday.
It was fantastic. Thank you. And the notes from today's session will be shared from everyone in due course.
Awesome.
Yeah,
Thanks all.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Lucy.
Thanks, guys. Have a good one. Bye.
Bye.